My wife started locking one drawer in the garage after 27 years of marriage. I wish I had opened it sooner. I have been married to Denise for 27 years. Long enough to survive layoffs, dead bedrooms, 2 rebellious teenagers, 1 bankruptcy scare, and the kind of arguments where nobody raises their voice because the silence already does all the damage for you. I always believed we were solid. Not perfect. Perfect is nonsense people post online between their second divorce and third motivational quote. But solid? Yeah. I thought we were solid. Then one stupid little thing started eating at me. The drawer in the garage. Now before some of you roll your eyes, hear me out. Men notice patterns. Especially older men. We know when the furnace sounds different. We know when the dog stops barking at the mailman. And we damn sure know when our wife suddenly starts acting strange around a dusty metal cabinet she ignored for 15 years. Denise had never cared about that garage drawer. It was full of old manuals, extension cords, expired coupons, and random junk nobody touches until they die and their kids throw it all in a dumpster. Then one Tuesday night I walked in from work and saw her slam it shut so fast she nearly caught her fingers. That alone was odd. What really got my attention was her face. Not guilt. Not panic. Fear. And let me tell you something, gentlemen. When your wife looks afraid instead of annoyed, your brain starts connecting dots whether you want it to or not. I asked her what she was doing. She laughed too quickly. Said she was organizing old paperwork. At 9:30 at night. In a freezing garage. While wearing makeup she only used for dinners out. Come on now. I did not accuse her of anything. I am too old for dramatic nonsense. I simply watched. Quietly. Calmly. Like a man checking the foundation of his house after spotting one tiny crack. Over the next 2 weeks, Denise became a different person in ways so small most husbands would miss them. She started taking phone calls outside. Smiling at texts she hid when I walked by. Suddenly caring how she looked just to run errands. You know that feeling when your stomach tightens before your brain catches up? Like your instincts arrive 5 minutes earlier than logic? That was me every morning. The strange thing was this, she also became unusually nice to me. Too nice. My coffee already made before I woke up. My favorite bourbon stocked without asking. She even suggested a weekend trip together out of nowhere. Men, you ever notice how guilt sometimes shows up dressed like kindness? One Friday evening, I finally tested something. I casually walked toward the garage while she was cooking dinner. Nothing dramatic. I just said I needed a screwdriver. She almost dropped the spatula. I'll get it, she said immediately. Too immediately. That was the moment the switch flipped in my head. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, Denise, what the hell is in that drawer? She froze. Completely froze. Then she smiled. That fake tired wife smile people use when they want to escape a conversation without technically lying. Nothing important, she said. Now here is where a weak man starts yelling. A foolish man starts searching phones. A reckless man blows up his marriage before he even knows the facts. I did none of that. Instead, I poured myself a drink and sat on the back porch alone for nearly an hour. I kept asking myself one question. What scares me more? The possibility that my wife is hiding something, or the possibility that I no longer know the woman I built my life with? That question stayed in my head all night. At around midnight, Denise thought I was asleep. I heard the garage door creak open. Then I heard something else. Not talking. Crying. Quiet. Controlled. The kind of crying someone does when they are trying not to completely fall apart. And brother, that sound chilled me more than any affair ever could have. Because suddenly I realized this situation might be far uglier than I first imagined. And the next morning, One accidental detail on an old receipt inside our kitchen trash can push me toward a truth I never saw coming. What would you guys have done at that point? Because trust me, things were only starting to unravel. The receipt looked harmless at first glance. Grocery store. Drugstore. Gas station. Normal suburban life. The kind of paper clutter every married couple collects by the pound. Then I saw the hotel charge. Not a luxury place. Nothing flashy. A small business hotel 40 minutes outside town near the interstate. The date was from 3 weeks earlier. Same day Denise told me she spent the afternoon helping her sister shop for patio furniture. Now listen carefully. I did not jump to conclusions. At my age, you learn that panic makes fools out of smart men. But facts matter. So I folded the receipt, slipped it into my wallet, and kept my mouth shut. That weekend Denise acted almost nervous around me. She kept studying my face like she was waiting for something. Waiting for me to explode maybe. Waiting for the roof to cave in. I stayed calm. Honestly, I think my calmness bothered her more than anger would have. Sunday morning, she asked if I wanted pancakes. Denise hated making pancakes. Said they were too messy. 27 years together and suddenly I was living inside a breakfast commercial. You guys ever experience that? When someone tries so hard to appear normal that they become suspicious all over again. By Monday, I decided I needed answers. Real answers. Not imagination. Not fear. Evidence. I left work early and drove to that hotel. The young guy at the front desk barely looked old enough to rent a car. I showed him the receipt and told him my wife must have accidentally left something there during a work seminar. Not entirely a lie. Just edited truth. He checked the computer. Then he said something that made my chest go cold. There were 2 guests checked into that room. Funny how one sentence can make 27 years suddenly feel fragile. I asked for the second name. The kid shook his head. Privacy policy. Fair enough. I sat in my truck afterward for almost 20 minutes staring at the steering wheel. My mind went places I am not proud of. Every late phone call. Every sudden errand. Every strange smile. But something still did not fit. Denise was guilty of something. I could feel it in my bones. But cheating? The pieces were sloppy. Too sloppy. Affairs usually come wrapped in excitement. This felt heavier. Sadder. Then my phone buzzed. It was Denise. Are you coming home for dinner? Simple question. Ordinary wife stuff. But her voice sounded shaky. I told her I would be late. Long silence. Then she quietly asked, "Mark, are we okay?" That hit me harder than I expected. Because women planning to leave usually do not ask that question with fear in their voice. I drove home around 8. Denise was sitting alone at the kitchen table. No television. No music. Just silence and a cup of tea she had not touched. The second I walked in, she looked at my face searching for answers. I almost confronted her right there. Almost. But then I noticed something else. Her wedding ring was sitting beside the cup. Not forgotten. Placed there deliberately. That tiny detail told me this situation was about to get very real. And later that night, after Denise finally fell asleep beside me, I made a decision that changed the entire direction of our marriage. I was going to open that garage drawer myself. At 2 in the morning, I walked into that garage like a man heading toward a car wreck he already knew was there. Quiet steps. Cold floor. Heart steady. That part matters. A grown man cannot control what happens to him, but he better control how he responds to it. The drawer was locked. Small brass lock. Cheap thing. Took me less than 30 seconds with an old flathead screwdriver. When it popped open, I honestly expected one of two things. Love letters. Or divorce papers. Instead, I found a thick envelope, a stack of receipts, and a photo I had not seen in over 20 years. My younger brother, Eric. I just stood there staring at it. Eric died when he was 39. Construction accident. At least that is what everyone believed. Denise cried harder at his funeral than some blood relatives did. She always said he reminded her of the man I used to be before work and bills turned life into a treadmill. Under the photo was paperwork from a private rehabilitation clinic. His name all over it. Dates from 6 months before his death. Then came the punch to the throat. Payment records. Signed by Denise. I sat down right there on the garage floor like somebody had knocked the air out of me. My brother had been in rehab. Secretly. And my wife had paid for it behind my back. For years I believed Eric died instantly at that construction site. But the documents painted a different picture. Painkillers. Relapses. Treatment attempts. Missed appointments. My own damn brother was drowning, and somehow everybody knew except me. You want to know what hurt most? Not the secrecy. The realization that my wife did not trust me enough to tell me the truth. I heard the door behind me before I saw her. Denise stood there in her robe looking pale as winter. She saw the open drawer and closed her eyes. No screaming. No fake outrage. Just exhaustion. How long were you going to hide this from me? I asked. Her lips trembled. Until the day I died if I had to. That answer lit a fire in me. I stood up slowly. You let me bury my own brother believing a lie. Tears rolled down her face immediately. Real tears. Not performance. Not manipulation. He begged me not to tell you. I laughed once. Bitter. Sharp. So you chose him over your husband? No, she whispered. I chose what I thought would protect you. That right there is where marriages get dangerous. Not because of hatred. Because of pride. Because people start making decisions for each other instead of with each other. Denise finally admitted everything. Eric became addicted after a back injury. He was ashamed. Terrified I would look at him differently. Denise found out by accident after he called her one night barely coherent. She helped him secretly. Money. Clinics. Meetings. All hidden from me. Then came the part that made the whole room spin. The second guest at the hotel was Eric. Not a lover. My brother had fallen off the wagon again shortly before his death, and Denise met him there during one of his breakdowns. She had been carrying that guilt for over 2 decades. Men, tell me honestly, could you forgive something like that? Not betrayal of the body. Betrayal of trust. Because standing there in that garage, I truly did not know if I still recognized my own marriage anymore. And Denise was finally ready to tell me the one detail she had hidden all these years because she feared it would destroy me completely. Denise sat across from me at the kitchen table just before sunrise. No makeup. No excuses left. Just 2 exhausted people staring at 27 years of marriage like it was cracked glass. She kept twisting a napkin in her hands. Finally she said, Eric blamed himself for what happened to your father. That stopped me cold. My father drank himself into an early grave when I was 23. Hard man. Proud man. Loved us in that old-school silent way where putting food on the table counted as affection. Eric always thought he disappointed him. Especially after the addiction started. Denise looked me straight in the eyes. The night before the accident, Eric called me from that hotel. He was drunk and terrified. He said he wanted to tell you everything himself. I felt my jaw tighten. But he changed his mind, she continued. He said you already carried enough responsibility your whole life. He did not want to become another burden you had to clean up. That one hurt because it sounded exactly like my brother. Stubborn. Proud. Dumb as hell sometimes. Denise wiped her eyes. I should have told you after he died. I know that now. But every year that passed made it harder. Then it became this ugly thing I buried deeper and deeper. You know what the worst part was? I understood why she hid it. That does not erase the damage, though. A man can understand the reason behind a knife and still bleed from it. I got up and poured coffee for both of us. My hands were steady again. Anger burns hot at first, but eventually a man has to decide whether he wants revenge or truth. I wanted truth. So why now? I asked quietly. Why were you suddenly crying in the garage after all these years? Denise looked down at the table. Then she said something that nearly broke me. Our son found pills in his gym bag last month. Silence. Heavy silence. Not hard drugs. Painkillers. Leftover pills from a friend after a sports injury. But to Denise, it felt like history walking back through the front door wearing our son's face. That was why she panicked. Why she reopened the drawer. Why she suddenly became distant and terrified. She had been carrying this secret so long that the moment she saw even the shadow of addiction near our family again, she fell apart inside. And instead of trusting me, she tried handling it alone all over again. Same mistake. Different decade. I leaned back in my chair and stared out the window while the sun came up. Funny thing about marriage. Sometimes the real enemy is not betrayal. It is fear. Fear of disappointing each other. Fear of looking weak. Fear of reopening old wounds. Denise finally whispered, I know you may never forgive me. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said something she clearly did not expect. This marriage is not ending because of one terrible decision made 20 years ago. She started crying again. Harder this time. But I held up my hand. Do not mistake mercy for weakness, I told her calmly. You broke trust. That has consequences. We fix this honestly, or we do not fix it at all. For the first time in weeks, I saw relief in her face instead of fear. But one conversation was not enough to repair decades of silence. And later that afternoon, I made a decision about our son that forced both of us to confront the kind of parents we had really become. That afternoon I took my son, Caleb, out for a drive. No lectures. No angry father routine. Young men stop listening the second you climb onto a soapbox. We ended up at a little diner near the river where I used to take him after baseball practice. Same cracked booths. Same terrible coffee. Funny how life circles back to old places when something important needs to be said. I asked him directly about the pills. He looked embarrassed more than defensive, which told me a lot right away. Turns out they were exactly what Denise suspected. Painkillers from another kid after a shoulder injury. Caleb swore he never even took one. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe not completely. But I saw enough honesty in his eyes to know we caught this early. So I told him about Eric. Not every ugly detail. Just enough. I explained how addiction does not always arrive looking like disaster. Sometimes it walks in dressed like stress relief. Sometimes it looks like a shortcut after a hard week. Caleb listened quietly the whole time. Then he asked me something I did not expect. Why didn't Mom tell you? Man. That question sat heavy in my chest. I stared out the diner window for a second before answering. Because good people sometimes make bad decisions when fear gets involved. That was the truth of it. Not evil. Not betrayal in the cheap dramatic sense people online love to scream about. Fear. Pride. Shame. Years of silence growing mold in the dark. When we got home, Denise was waiting in the kitchen looking like she had aged 10 years in 10 days. I told Caleb to throw the pills away in front of both of us. He did. No argument. Then I asked him to give me and his mother a minute alone. After he left the room, Denise started apologizing again. I stopped her gently. No more speeches, I said. We are past that part. I sat across from her and laid everything out plain and simple. No more secret burdens. No more protecting each other through lies. No more pretending strength means suffering alone. For the first time in years, Denise looked at me without walls around her eyes. Just honest exhaustion. Honest love. She admitted something then that stuck with me. I spent 20 years thinking I was protecting this family, she said quietly. But really I was protecting myself from your disappointment. That right there was the center of the whole mess. People think marriages collapse because of one giant explosion. Most times, they erode slowly from silence. From unspoken fears. From two people carrying private pain instead of setting it down together. I reached across the table and took her hand. Not because I forgot what she did. Not because I am weak. But because after 27 years, I knew the difference between a malicious person and a flawed human being drowning in regret. And Denise was drowning. I told her forgiveness was not a free pass. Trust would take time. Honest conversations. Counseling. Real work. But I also told her this. Strong families are not the ones that never break. They are the ones willing to rebuild correctly after the damage is exposed. She cried quietly after that. Not dramatic. Just relief finally leaving her body. That night we sat on the back porch together for the first time in months without tension hanging in the air. The world felt strangely calm again. Older too. Wiser maybe. You know, men spend half their lives believing strength means carrying everything alone. Truth is, real strength sometimes means allowing the people you love to see your scars without turning away from them. And before some of you ask, yes, I replaced the lock on that garage drawer. Not to hide secrets. To remind both of us what happens when silence becomes more important than trust.